You grabbed your keys. You put on your shoes. You said goodbye. Or maybe you didn't, because you had read somewhere that long goodbyes make it worse. And your dog watched every single movement. The door closed, and in the next 7 minutes, something happened inside your dog's body that most owners never think about. Not the howling, not the destroyed furniture, not the symptoms you can see. The silent ones, the ones that happen whether your dog shows them or not. And what happens in those 7 minutes, and what you do in the 60 seconds before you leave, changes everything. Most people think separation anxiety is about the dog being dramatic, barking, destroying things, making a mess. But researchers who measured what actually happens inside dogs during separation found something that reframes the entire conversation. In studies where dogs were monitored with physiological sensors during owner absence, the vast majority of dogs showed no dramatic external signs. No barking, no destruction, no obvious distress, and yet their cortisol was elevated. Their heart rate was up. Their body temperature had shifted. The stress was completely invisible from the outside, which means most owners go through their entire lives not realizing that their dog, the one who looks perfectly fine when they leave, is running a measurable stress response every single time. There are 3 things science has found about this, and the third one will definitely change your morning routine starting tomorrow. The first finding, the 7-minute window. Researchers studying cortisol and heart rate in dogs during owner absence found a consistent pattern. The most significant physiological stress response occurred in the first 7 minutes after the owner left. Not the first hour, not when they realized you weren't coming back quickly, the first 7 minutes. After that initial window, most dogs shifted into a lower-level waiting state, elevated from baseline, but no longer at peak stress. This means the moment you close the door is the most physiologically intense moment of your dog's alone time. Not when you've been gone for hours. The moment the door closes. Think about what that means. Every morning when you leave for work, the hardest 7 minutes of your dog's day happen before you've even reached the end of your street. When I learned this, it completely changed how I think about my mornings. Did you know your dog's stress peaks right when you leave, not hours later? Does that change how you think about your mornings too? Write it in the comments. The second finding changes how you define separation anxiety entirely. A 2021 study published in Scientific Reports found that separation-related stress in dogs exists on a spectrum, and the visible symptoms most people associate with anxiety are actually at the extreme end of that spectrum. Most dogs experiencing separation stress show what researchers call low-intensity indicators. Not destruction, not barking, staying near the door, restlessness in the first few minutes, interrupted sleep, yawning, lip licking, a subtle shift in posture. These are not dramatic, they're almost invisible, but physiologically, the stress response is measurable and real. The implication is significant. If you're only looking for dramatic symptoms to decide whether your dog has separation anxiety, you're probably missing it. Most dogs experience some level of separation stress. Most owners never know, because the dog looks fine. Have you ever watched your dog on a camera after you leave? What did they do in those first few minutes? Stayed near the door, looked around, settled quickly, or paced first? Write it in the comments. This question always generates fascinating answers. Now the third finding, and this is the one that should change your morning routine starting tomorrow. A 2018 pilot study published in the Journal of Veterinary Behavior tested a simple question. Does petting your dog before you leave reduce their stress during the separation? The results were clear. Dogs who were gently petted before a brief separation displayed behaviors indicating calmness for statistically significantly longer periods during the separation itself. Their heart rate showed a marked decrease after the test. The act of physical contact in the 60 seconds before departure measurably changed the dog's physiological stress response. Not talking to them, not a long, elaborate goodbye, not treats. Quiet, gentle physical touch for 60 seconds, 1 minute, before you leave. That's the intervention. That's what the data supports. Think about what this means practically. Most of us rush out the door. Keys, shoes, phone, go. And in that rush, we skip the one thing that actually changes what happens inside our dog for the next several hours. Do you have a leaving ritual with your dog? Something you do every time before you go? Write it in the comments. I'm genuinely curious what people do. Here's the finding that surprised me most. Researchers comparing different interventions for helping dogs cope with owner absence tested several approaches: background music, worn clothing with the owner's scent, interactive toys, and pre-departure petting. The item of clothing carrying the owner's scent was among the most consistently effective. Dogs given access to a t-shirt or blanket that carried their owner's scent showed lower cortisol and fewer stress behaviors during separation, compared to dogs with no scent item. Your smell, present in the room, is physiologically calming to your dog, not just comforting in a vague way. Measurably calming, in the same way that your physical presence calms them, because to your dog, your scent is you. It carries the same biological signal as your presence. It activates the same attachment response. One study described it this way: the scent item functions as a social buffer. It doesn't eliminate the stress of your absence, but it softens the peak. Have you ever left a worn item of clothing with your dog, or noticed them seeking out your smell when you're gone? Write it in the comments. None of this is surprising when you consider the evolutionary context. For 15,000 years, dogs never experienced solitude the way modern dogs do. They slept beside humans. They traveled with humans. They were never more than a few meters from their attachment figure for most of their evolutionary history. The concept of a dog alone in a house for 8 hours is entirely novel from an evolutionary standpoint. Their biology was never designed for it. This doesn't mean you're doing something wrong by having a dog and going to work. It means understanding what your dog experiences and doing the small, science-backed things that soften that experience is part of what it means to care for them well. There's something important here that most owners miss. If your dog shows any of the following when you prepare to leave: pay attention, trembling or panting before you go, following you from room to room as you get ready, refusing to eat, hiding or cowering near the door, excessive drooling. These are not minor quirks. These are signs of a stress response that is affecting your dog's quality of life. Separation anxiety exists on a spectrum, from mild cortisol elevation that most dogs experience, to a clinical condition that requires behavioral intervention and sometimes medication. If your dog's pre-departure behavior is significantly distressed, not just a little restless, but trembling, refusing food, showing physical symptoms, that warrants a conversation with a veterinarian or a certified animal behaviorist. You can love your dog deeply and still not know that they're struggling every time you leave. These are not signs of a bad dog or a dramatic dog. They are signs of a dog whose attachment system is overwhelmed, and that's treatable. Does your dog show any pre-departure stress signs? Write it in the comments. The spectrum from mild to significant is worth talking about openly. So tomorrow morning, before you grab your keys, before you put on your shoes, before you rush out the door, 60 seconds. Quiet, gentle, present. Not a long goodbye, not a big production. Just the one thing the data says actually changes what the next 7 minutes look like for the animal waiting on the other side. They don't understand where you go. They don't understand when you're coming back. They only know that you were here, and now you're not. And in those first 7 minutes, the hardest 7 minutes of their day, they are running on nothing but the biological trace of you that you left behind. On this channel, every week we go deeper into the science of the bond between you and your dog, because they chose to spend their one life with you. They deserve to be understood.